Welcome back to the And I Hate podcast, a forum to discuss and combat student hate. Today we are here with Dr. Munro, the executive coach for the National Center for Urban School Transformation. Dr. Munro has worked in education for almost 2 decades and has held many roles, including being a superintendent, teacher, and curriculum developer. Dr. Munro works with underserved schools and students, and he believes that every student has the potential to excel with the right support and encouragement. We are here today to talk about bias and assumptions that we make about people as we come back to school and the transformative power of education. So, hi, Dr. Monroe. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I did not do you
Pleasure.
justice in that introduction. So, why don't you give us like a brief background of yourself and what you do at the National Center for Urban School Transformation?
Well, first off, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be a part of your podcast. So I've been in education for over 20 years. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and studied at the University of Toronto. And then I went to Johns Hopkins University for teaching mathematics, and then taught in Baltimore City Public Schools for a number of years. So that's a little bit about in terms of my teaching background, taught math and science, and then went to to West Coast to California and was an administrator in San Diego, where I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Ward, and she's been a mentor of mine for many years to this very day. And then I went on as a principal, executive director, superintendent, and as an executive coach with National Center for Urban School Transformation.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. So why, in the beginning, why did you choose to go into education? Like what about it was, what about it were you passionate about?
Well, I think it started with a mentor of mine, Dr. Thomas Messiah. And just every Saturday, they had like an enrichment program at one of our local schools in Toronto. And I spent so many Saturdays. My parents would wake me up to take advantage of this excellent opportunity. He was a brilliant mathematician, but really he was a chemist at heart. And we just formed this bond over the years, and just seeing how he invested in me, how my parents invested in me. My dad was an amazing teacher as well. Every Saturday, he would have me at the kitchen table, and we'd just be going after math problem after math problem after math problem. He would take my sister and I religiously to the library to sign out books. So, and then having the opportunity to also tutor students on a Saturday and work with them, it just, started becoming obvious to me that this is my passion. And I really love to see students succeed. I want them to be successfully, socially, emotionally, as well as academically, because I know that if you get the social, emotional piece taken care of, they're more likely to succeed academically. And I'll touch more on that later on in the interview. But that's really, in short, what really got me into education is really working with students and having that itch, that passion, and then getting into the actual schools. It really just solidified my passion for education and for teaching and their success long term. One of the reasons also that what inspires me and what drives me, um, and why I have such strong determination to succeed is one, obviously, I have, a young family, I have kids, a wife. And the morning that I was getting my doctorate degree, um, I was sitting in my kitchen and my mom came up to me and handed me an envelope, and it had the it had on the envelope the label of my elementary school. And my mother said to me, "I want you to open it." So when I opened it, this is what it said. He speaks with an accent. He cannot learn. He needs to be in special education, and he needs to take up a trade. 2 hours later, to collect my doctorate degree. So it's things like that that drive me because here this was from kindergarten. This letter was from kindergarten. I'm sitting in my house in San Diego going to get my doctorate degree, and my mother handed me a letter from kindergarten. And imagine if my parents had taken on what the school had said. But one thing I noticed on that letter is there was a box that was checked and it said parents did not attend. And the only issue was that I had hearing problems. I couldn't hear that well. And as soon as I got my hearing fixed, I thrived.
Hmm.
Plus, the work was too easy for me. So, how are they ensuring that I was being pushed, that I was being motivated, that they were investing in me? Now, don't get me wrong, I had great teachers, but at the same time, it's those little pockets, those little interactions that can make all the difference,
Hmm.
that could make the difference between me not going and getting my doctorate and me going and getting my doctorate and having parents and teachers that invest in me. But just think, I was in kindergarten and they're telling me that I need to go into special ed and take up a trade.
Yeah.
And then the morning of, 2 hours later, my mother hands me this envelope that says, "This is what they thought of you in kindergarten." And 2 hours later, I'm walking across the stage to collect my doctorate degree. So that drives me. And I want it to drive anyone else who hears this message to never, ever, ever give up. Don't let anyone define who you should be because you are destined for greatness.
Wow. I don't have any words. Like that was a very inspirational story, and I completely agree. I think that I think that a lot of like something that frustrates me a lot. I really do like the educational system like on net. But something that frustrates me is that sometimes a lot of kids grow up thinking that they're not smart or that they can't do great things. And then as a result of that, they don't, push themselves to do great things and they never realize that they're capable of, achieving their dreams, doing what they love. And so this is such an important message that kids should challenge themselves, that teachers should make sure that no kid is left behind, like this year and all of the other years.
Yes, absolutely. And, you look at this technology, I could hold up my iPhone in particular, Facebook and how we communicate. And a lot of the stories is guys who dropped out,
Hmm.
you know, um, but they're still geniuses. They're still smart. And again, it's not that students aren't smart, but it's how are we delivering this material? Who benefited from this? Who did not benefit from this? How am I ensuring that I am bringing out the genius in students when I instruct the student so that they can realize their true potential? Because someone somewhere invested in the people, like I said, that create Zoom, create iPhones. Someone invested in them in some way. So it wasn't a matter of did they get an A on a calculus test, but
Hmm.
there was something, someone somewhere invested in them that they had that determination that even when people to Walt Disney, that this is ridiculous, a theme park, it's never going to work. And look at it today. So it's just a matter of us really lighting that fire of ingenuity, creativity in someone and believing in them and investing in them to ensure their success.
Yeah, I really get that. It's so heartwarming hearing all of those stories about when you were younger. I was talking to my mom about it just this weekend. She was telling me like in my family, my mom was my first teacher. Like she was the first person who taught me how to read, who taught me how to do math. And after her, I've obviously had so many amazing like teachers and educators that have touched my life. So it's really nice to know that this is like somewhat of a universal experience. It's very inspiring. So right now, what would you say is like your favorite thing about your job?
I would say it's definitely the student success, being there to serve the students, the staff. That's important to me because I know that if you're addressing their needs, They're more likely to be successful. The teachers are more likely, and the staff and the principals and whomever else, that they're likely to be able to accomplish their jobs, which all centers around student success.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really nice. I also believe in this. Like I was very fortunate to grow up in like school districts and schools that were very nice, comforting, and welcoming environments. Like the teachers seemed very happy to be there, the students were too. And it really made I think it made everybody's experience really nice. So,
To add to that, I had amazing teachers, and I too went to great schools. I had amazing teachers in Miss Aston, who did like world history, social sciences, Mr. Hill, who was my calculus teacher, and then Miss Monroe, ironically named same name, different spelling, but she was the principal of the school,
Mhm.
and always greeted with a smile, always patient, understanding, loving, caring, always want to know about how you're doing. What can I do to serve you, to ensure your success? Taking us to the Model United Nations at Yale University to take part in those debates as a debate team, just investing in you as a person, as an individual. And it pays dividends because here am I sitting here today. And you just wonder, like, if more and more students have these opportunities and these experiences, I don't believe that we would hear about these teacher shortages. I
Mhm.
really don't believe that. I believe that as you invest in students, you will see more and more students invest in their education, but also invest in the field of education as well.
Yeah. It's so important to keep students invested in their own education and like keep faith in the system, both for educators and for students. So how is this related to like the National Center for Urban School Transformation and what you guys do?
Our work really is helping districts and schools achieve equity and excellence. Since 2005, NCUST has worked with over 200 schools, elementary, middle, high school. And really, we have identified, awarded, and studied all those over 200 schools and 25 states and the District of Columbia. And again, we want to know what that secret sauce is. We hear about how nationally, how you have your impacted groups, such as your African American, Hispanic, SPED populations, emerging multilingual learners, and there's such struggle academically and socially, emotionally. And we want to know what's the secret sauce where you are defying the odds, you are showing great gains, student achievement, high graduation rates. And these are schools that do not have entry requirements, but
Mhm.
yet we have staff after staff, student after student showing those gains. So we wanted to know what that is so that we can then go into other schools and districts and show them this is what it takes. This is what the research, what the data, what our findings are showing, and you too can replicate this as well.
Wow. So obviously the secret sauce, there's a lot more nuance to it. But in your work at NCUST, have you seen any one thing or a few things that teachers or schools are doing that are really helping their kids be successful?
Yes, excellent question. And really what it comes down to, what we found a lot is those three things: the rigor, the relationships, and the relevance. And the relationships come first.
Mhm.
Making sure that it's student centered, that you are focusing on your students and their needs, whether that is making sure that you have a guaranteed homeroom where students can check in and you have that for a number of years.
Mhm.
Consistent with that same teacher. Obviously, it's depending on the makeup of the school,
Yeah.
making sure that students can see themselves in the work, in the material, in the reading material, in the literature that they read. Um, and then also, obviously, with the rigor, that students see that, wow, I'm learning, algebra or calculus at a time and a place or at a grade level where I should not be exposed to this. Society says that I should not be exposed to this high level material. However, because of the teacher's belief in me, and this is students saying this, they're saying, I know that my teacher believes in me and they're willing to give me projects and work and curricula that society says that I should not have this. I should not be exposed to this. This is not for me or my race. But yet they believe in me so much so that they're willing to make sure that I have the opportunity to succeed. And they're willing to put in place the support. So it's not just like chicken feed, you just throw it out there and whoever gets it. But they're willing to make sure that they're putting in the place the supports and the checks and the monitoring to make sure that at each step of the way, they're checking for understanding constantly to make sure that they master this material. And that comes with strong professional learning communities where teachers are coming together with, of course, student success in mind and saying, okay, what do we need to do to ensure success?
Yeah. The way that you were describing, I do agree that rigor is really important. I go to a really good school that has a lot of rigorous classes, and the mentality of a lot of the students, it is a little competitive, it is a little cutthroat, but all of these kids have this really strong belief that they can succeed at what they do and what they love to do. And that's something that's really uplifting to me. So when you were describing like the groups that feel left out of this, that feel like they can't participate in certain forms of curriculum or certain like class levels, what specific groups are being left out of these educational spaces right now, and why do you think they're being left out?
I would say, based on our findings, what the data says, you would see large amounts of African American, Hispanic, emergent multilingual learners, SPED, and just generally, too, I want to be very clear, just students who are not meeting standard. That, again, that means that they are not getting access to the material, or we are not setting them up for success. And I mean, I'm responsible for that as well. I take responsibility for that. So it's not only any group, it's each student making sure that they are meeting standard. And when they are not, then the question has to be asked, well, what are we doing about it? Because essentially, at the conclusion of every lesson, the question should be asked, who benefited from this lesson? Even at the beginning, when you're in the planning stages, who's going to benefit from my lesson? And how do I ensure that they have? And who has not benefited from this lesson? And then at the conclusion, when you reflect as a leader, who benefited from this lesson and who did not benefit from this lesson? Because then that then allows you to go back and say, okay, I'm being honest and transparent with myself and my teaching and my delivery of instruction. And now I've got to go back and determine, okay, what do I have to do to ensure everyone benefited from this lesson? And to answer your question, why they're being left out, again, what are, in some cases, it's the delivery of instruction.
Mhm.
Are we making sure that, again, do they see themselves in this learning? Um, is it engaging for them? Did I take the time to make sure that I'm looking at the different modalities of learning and how my students learn best? And I'm making sure that I'm creating lessons in which I am addressing those modalities of learning so that we can realize their true potential.
Mhm. So this divide that you describe of like students that are getting something out of these lessons and students that are not, is this difference and this like, imbalance glaringly obvious, or is it usually like little small signs? And how can educators and other students recognize these signs and, alleviate these issues, like close the gap?
It could be as easy as looking at the California data dashboard, where we're looking at those like 7 areas in terms of absenteeism, suspension, English learner progress, graduation rates, college and career readiness. What's their performance in ELA and mathematics? It could be simple as that. Just looking at that data and saying, okay, here where we have gaps and we need to address these areas and these student groups. It could also be like death by 1,000 cuts, where we are looking and saying to ourselves, um, yes, you are at a very high performing school, but yet at the same time, we do have students that are slipping through the cracks. But
Mhm.
because we look at the overall data The glaring or obvious or even small, it could also be student-teacher interactions.
Mhm.
How are we allowing students to just slip through the cracks? Or what are the feelings to the student, towards the student? Have those avenues of communication being open? Is there the feeling that, you've reached your potential? Or I really don't have the time. Okay, so it is a matter of opening up those lines of communication and making sure that a teacher welcomes that student, makes them feel appreciated, loved, and really has that mentality of you will succeed in this classroom, and I'm going to do every single thing in my power to ensure that you are very successful. You cannot fail in this class. You will be successful. And when you have that mentality, you make a student feel loved and appreciated, and they in turn want to work hard. And that's what we've seen as we've gone around to 200 schools. It is that belief in each student, that efficacy, that agency. The environment is rich with you can do it, we believe in you, and it is every single classroom. And where there is a classroom or a teacher that doesn't have that feeling, they are given the supports. And if they do not respond, then they find a teacher that believes in that student.
Mhm. What are some specific actions that teachers or even other students can do that would really shift the way that we treat students that slip through the cracks, that change the mindset from like, oh, you're falling behind, like stay there, to we genuinely believe in you, we will lift you back up.
I think part of those actions, one, are again making students feel a part. The teacher, well, what we have seen is where students take ownership of their work. The teacher will show them, here's where you're at, here's your grades, here's where you need to go, and here's what we're going to do to get you there. And then when results come back, it's not just about here's your grade, but it's like, okay, now here's what we need to do to improve this grade. Here's what we need to make it even better. And then we're going to sit together. I'm going to pull up a chair beside you, or I'll bring you up to a workspace, a work area, and say, okay, let's work on this, solving this problem. So, again, engaging them in the learning. Another very important piece is this cultural awareness, which we don't speak enough about. And by that, I mean, how are we engaging the parents? Do we know how to talk to the parents? Do parents even know what to ask at a back to school night or an academic night? So making sure that there is that bridge from home to school, and that the teachers and the parents and the entire staff and the community have a good, close working, collaborative, but culturally respectful relationship. So we know we're aware of what students are going through at home, and that the family can communicate openly with the teachers to say, okay, can you help me to understand so that I can then help my child? So that's equally important if we when we talk about how do we increase student achievement. Well, it takes a village and it takes everyone, and that's part of that everyone has to be involved and engaged together as well.
Yeah, definitely. Having those support systems, especially for younger kids or especially for kids that feel like they're, not good students or that they're not at the same level of their peers is really, really important because, it empowers them to believe in the system, to want to succeed, to believe that they can succeed, which is so important. So bringing it back to like back to school and, everybody's coming back to school right now. Like parents are going to the back to school nights that you mentioned. What are some issues that arise for a lot of these students or a lot of these families that are slipping through the cracks, especially during back to school season?
I think one of the glaring ones is, you know, you now have disrupted a routine, because obviously from August, September through late May, June across America, there's a routine. And now you don't have a routine for a number of months. And where you or I or my kids can go back and say, we went to, XYZ countries over the summer. We got to see, this monument, this river, this ocean, science centers. Other students may not have that opportunity.
Hmm.
And really, their biggest connection is the school, it is the teacher. That is their lifeline, that is their connection to everything. And then for 2 months, that doesn't exist. So recognizing that and then knowing, okay, how do we bring students and families, that's important, and families up to speed to give them the resources that they need to get them back in the fold. And the other thing is this: school ends, like I said, late May, June. And then somehow we just like, think that, okay, come August, they're right back at the same school. Well, they may have moved thousands of miles. They may have moved across the city. May have moved to a different neighborhood. So guess what? They've got to start that relationship all over again. I mean, I could visit my high school. Um, years back, I could visit my high school, and the same teachers that were my teachers were still there. That's not the case of a lot of students across America, where you have, in some cases, a turnstile operation of teachers. So that
Hmm.
stability of the teacher, the principal, the community networking, the friends, that's all gone. So now you have to start that all over. So when we talk about the traumatic experiences and trauma informed care, we have to understand that that's what students are going through and what they're experiencing. So I say all that to say this: that a student's health, mental health, and social emotional well-being is a precursor to their academic success. That must be taken care of first. So we've got to take that into account and making sure that we have those systems in place so that we can make those transitions smooth, because we cannot just take for granted that school year ended and they're just coming back to the same school, same friends, same teachers. In a lot of cases, that is not the case.
Hmm.
But I think being there for the students, like I said, is very important. But I'll touch on it more in the other questions that you ask.
Okay. So you talk about like social emotional health kind of being the foundation of the student's success for the rest of the year. And I completely agree. So, and it obviously it takes a village, right? Like teachers, family members, and then also other students and friends at school. So what can other students do at the beginning of this new school year to make people feel, welcome, to make them feel like they have a community and like they can succeed, especially if they're in a new school or in an environment that's like out of their depths?
One of the things that I have done, that I've seen has worked,
Hmm.
is engaging our counselors, identifying the students, um, making sure that we're tracking who's involved in what clubs, um, that are available to students. Because I feel like when students are connected to a community, they feel connected. They want to be a part. Then they're more likely to open up because you're building trust. And then they're more likely to share, here's what I'm going through. But I'm only willing to do this because I trust you and I know you and you've taken the time to get to know me. So morning routines are very important, especially when we're talking about, for example, elementary school. When we're talking more middle and high, then we're talking about homerooms where we have those check-ins. You can look in the eye of students. Another thing we can't take for granted is this: all across America, students will walk into school, go through the entire day, walk out, go to their home, and never have to utter a word, and no one utters a word to them. They don't
Hmm.
speak to anyone, and no one speaks to them. They literally have to say nothing. So that engagement is very important because we can't turn back after something may happen and say, oh my God, I never knew that they were going through it. Well, what did we do to ensure that we were making an effort to get to know those students and to understand, build that trust, and then know what they're going through so that we could provide the community supports for them or the supports right at the school. But it's important that we're checking in regularly, that counselors are checking in with them. As administrators, when we walk around campus, are we noticing students, how they dress, or are they isolated by themselves? Is there any bullying going on? How do we aggressively stamp that out? Because, as you know, this digital age that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
there's different ways to communicate that can be a positive, but can also be very hurtful and painful and keep kids away from school. So, how are we making sure that we're aware of this? Again, that tracker to me is critical in that do we know what club students are involved in? Is every student involved in something? The other day I came across a student. I was just helping out at a campus, and a student came up to me and said, I'm new. I'd like to join the football team. I stopped everything I was doing to ensure that that student, I didn't pass him off to the office or anything like that. I had him stand with me until I found a coach. Why? Because it was so important that he get connected right away. And I told the coach, I said to him, the reason why I was so determined was because I want to make sure that he never has to spend another lunch by himself. He doesn't
Yes.
have to walk around aimlessly. I want him to be a part. I want him to be a part of something bigger. And the coach said, you're right. Because, people who are connected to something, they'll meet them in their fellow classes together. So they already have that connection. When they're on a team, after the hard practice or a game, guess what? They're going out somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use those avenues to build those connections. And when you're mentally right, then you'll see how you're academically right as well. Because you can also rely on your friends. They can help you. You can help them. You form those lifelong friendships and relationships that are unbreakable, especially in time of need. So we can never take this for granted. Never.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really get the value of community, especially through extracurriculars, like things like, sports teams, stuff like that. I'm in my senior year of high school right now, and I've been on the debate team all 4 years. And the people that I've met on the debate team are genuinely some of the closest friends that I have in high school. Like they're
Exactly.
very important relationships to me. So, in your work at NCUST, how have you seen like the transformative effects of just these little changes, like, including people in communities, inviting people to clubs, like checking in on students, whether that's weekly or daily or every other week? How have you seen like some of the benefits of this?
What we do see is where I can just even tell you, for example, speaking with staff
Mhm.
based on the surveys that we would give or interacting with the schools that we would perform audits on, and just telling us, thank you for being here. Thank you for your feedback. We do see a difference, even if certain things we were doing already, but how you've pushed us with your questions, and getting us to think outside the box and how we can create a more loving, engaging, respectful environment for our students, which now I understand would lead to a more successful experience for our students. And we would realize that achievement because of the climate and the culture that we're creating. When I was a principal, one of the things that I would constantly preach to the staff in San Diego was we have to make sure that our classrooms are a home away from home for our students. In some cases, this is all they've got. And we can't take that for granted. We have this narrow window, whether it's for a day, for a week, for a semester, for an entire year, or the life that they're at this school. But we can't take that for granted because these are probably the best times. And we got to make sure that we set them on that path to success so that whatever comes their way, they can overcome. But we got to show them what this is, what we're capable of being and what they deserve. And what I always preached was I want to create an environment that they are worthy of. We want to create an environment that they are worthy of.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful sentiment because yeah, that's that's all I have to say about that. That's such a wonderful sentiment. I think that it really isn't like student success, student well-being is at the heart of our educational system, and that's something that we do have to remember a lot of the time. So, the work that you do at NCUST is clearly like so transformative, really, really good for students, especially those that have kind of, I don't want to say failed because that's such a negative word, but kind of been left behind by the educational system, kind of been told that they're not enough when really they are, and so much more. So, how can viewers support your efforts at NCUST or like a similar institution in their communities?
Oh, I think it's important to just go on ncust.com, www.ncust.com, go to services. You'll see our work in terms of equity audits, our A+ program where we're looking at a problem of practice, and looking at specific equity goals where we work with a team of administrators and they would do instructional walks at various campuses with, again, a team of educators. Um, we have the preliminary admin and admin services credential so that they can become administrators. We also have the NCUST leadership certificate program. And then we have book studies that we also do as well. We've worked with school districts where we can look at their problem of practice and how they can improve to ensure student achievement. And we just finished another book. This is like our fourth book, When Black Students Excel. And now we're currently working on our upcoming book to be released in 2025, Leadership Teams in America's Best Schools, improving the lives of all students, and really looking at leadership practices and the importance of good leaders and good first instruction and how leaders that really promote good first instruction and the practices that you would see in leaders, how will that transform into making sure that we have students that really truly achieve due to the work of leaders.
Wow, this all sounds amazing. Thank you so much for the work that you do at NCUST, and thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really learned a lot, and I hope for this upcoming school year, anybody who's viewing the And I Hate podcast can do their best to include other students in their communities so that we can make schools a safer place that every single student deserves. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure to be here, and keep up the great work. Thank you.